Good morning. Today on Spotlight, an interview with State Senator Aric Nesbitt of Michigan's 20th District, home seat Porter Township. He's also the new Republican leader of the Michigan Senate. What's his political party's agenda under his leadership? And what are his thoughts about Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the agenda of the first Democratic trifecta in this state in 40 years? With so many red-hot issues on the table, we'll ask him. It's Sunday, March the 19th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. We appreciate you joining us. Let's just jump right in. Certainly a very busy week, the last week there in Lansing. One thing that's getting a tremendous amount of attention is right to work. One of your colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, Darren Camilleri, who sponsored this bill, Democrat from Trenton, said, and I'll quote him, "With the repeal of these worker suppression laws, workers all across our state will be able to secure better wages, benefits, and treatment at their jobs. And it will help build power in families that will last for generations like it did for my own." You don't agree with that, right?
No, I think Senator Camilleri is really off in left field on his comments on this. It's very simple. Right to work provides workers the freedom to choose whether they want to join a union or not, whether they believe that the union actually provides value to them. Forcing that choice that anyone contradicts the right of free association principles that this country is founded on. And in fact, his bills on public employees goes against the Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court, and is really unconstitutional. All Michigan workers should be free to choose whether they join a union or not. And this repeal of right to work removes those protections. Over 150,000 individual Michiganders have made that choice since this was implemented in 2013, and having the government to force those same workers back into the unions they freely decide to leave is the antithesis of freedom. It's un-American. And repealing right to work, as Governor Snyder said the other week, and really puts a closed for business sign back on the state of Michigan. It's the wrong direction to go, and it's something where this is why other states with the Democratic trifecta, whether Colorado or Virginia, haven't repealed their own right to work laws, because they know that this is a way to continue to develop the economy, invest in jobs, and grow the economy. And this is going to mean lower incomes, less jobs, less families starting here in Michigan.
But isn't this perhaps just the Democrats giving the populace what they want? There was a recent poll that went out, Michigan AFL-CIO, and they said that 75% of workers say that they want more freedom to be able to make the decisions that affect their lives in the workplace.
Well, that wasn't a poll or a question on right to work at all. That was the AFL-CIO trying to get their own talking points together. The polls, 10 years ago, the AFL-CIO and the big unions put on a ballot initiative to ban right to work, put it in the state constitution to ban right to work. And that failed nearly 60-40. I think it was 58-42 after the unions outspent those that opposed it by a big margin. And that's what created the impetus to push for the right to work laws in 2012 was after Michigan voters soundly rejected the forced unionization of workers in the state of Michigan. Michigan voters have shown a track record of saying that they want a little more freedom, a little less government dictates, and allowing individuals over the state to choose how they want to spend their money. $1,000 a year of forced union dues, I think, is a blue-collar tax that is a wrong direction for the state of Michigan.
Mr. Republican leader, is this, in your mind, just political retaliation from the Democrats?
Governor Snyder, when he was running in 2010, said if right to work was put on his desk, he would sign it. And then when the unions went out and spent tens of millions of dollars to ban right to work, put that in the ban of right to work in the Constitution in 2012, voters soundly rejected that, 58% to 42%. And then after that election, the Michigan legislature passed right to work, and the Governor Snyder keeping the pledge that he made back in 2010.
So isn't this just retaliation from Democrats? Say we've got the power now, first time in 40 years, and our constituents, the people that helped us get elected, as you certainly have alluded to, are saying we want this repealed, and
Oh, it's a
we
total
need to.
payback to their union funders, their big union funders. I mean, this is something where unions spend what 99.8% of their political contributions go to Democrats, and so this is the start of fundraising for their own Democrat reelection campaign out of the state capitol. That's absolutely what they're doing.
What options do you have now? Will this incite recalls? Are there referendums that can be done, or is this a done deal?
I mean, my hope is that we see efforts in the next cycle in the election to put this in the Constitution. I would like to see that. This is a cornerstone of basic worker freedom. This is something that Michigan voters approve and support. And so my hope is that instead of going back and forth every decade, that I think this is something where it needs to be more permanent. There's a reason why in the last 60 years, there hasn't been one state that has repealed right to work laws. It's because they know this is important to grow the economy. This is an important part if you're serious about economic development, making sure that happens. And it shows that the Democrats and Governor Whitmer are not serious about economic development and growing jobs here in the state. They're more interested in providing political payback to their union bosses and union funders instead of believing in the individual and growing the economy.
All right, Mr. Republican leader, we need to take a quick little break. We'll come right back. We want to talk about some of the tax reform that you've done there in Lansing and how you believe that is indeed going to help the future of this state. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to the Republican leader of the Michigan Senate. He's from Porter Township, and he represents that community and is in a key leadership position there in the halls of Lansing. You have worked with the administration that currently has the power right now in the executive branch on some tax reform. Are you pleased with what you've done, and is there more to be done?
Well, first off, I think it's very unfortunate the way that Governor Whitmer and the Democrats in the legislature keep on trying to increase our state income tax. With the massive growth of revenue, $9 billion surplus the state of Michigan is dealing with right now, Governor Whitmer and the Democrats continue to try to have a higher income tax. With the close of books coming up, the promise that has been made to Michigan workers and taxpayers is that the income tax would roll back from 4.25% to 4.05%, which would mean about $700 million a year back into hardworking taxpayers' pockets. And so the House and Senate Republicans, with House Republican leader Hall and myself, we've worked effectively to help secure that state income tax rollback that all taxpayers, seniors and working families, see tax relief. It's been unfortunate the way the Democrats have tried to weaponize some areas of tax relief for working families and also for seniors on what we could have done in a bipartisan way. And it's unfortunate that the Democrats and Governor Whitmer continue to want to take a tax cut away from all working families in the state of Michigan. However, we are in the next week hopeful to see action on a small business tax cut that House and Senate Republicans have taken the lead on providing lower taxes for a lot of small businesses that have gone through very rigorous audits over the last few years. That is essentially a tax on services that the Treasury Department has been enacting on small businesses around the state. And my hope is that we'll see action and repeal over the next week that it looks like we'll be able to do in a bipartisan manner.
Yeah. Do you see any other areas in which you believe both the Republican side of the aisle and the Democratic side of the aisle can work together on, or has this vote on right to work sort of drawn a line in the sand and said, okay, that's it, we're through trying to work with you on all this?
Well, I mean, it shows how unserious the Governor Whitmer and the Democrats are on economic development. They actually don't want to grow the economy in the state. They don't want to compete and win in the 21st century, and that's very disappointing to see from my end. And then with the passage and reimplementation of prevailing wage, it shows that they're unserious about fixing the damn roads that the Governor Whitmer actually ran on. The reinstating prevailing wage in the state of Michigan means that instead of doing 10 lane miles, you could probably only do 9 lane miles. It means that you're going to have less money to pave less roads, or it's going to result in a tax increase at some point. And that means that all this campaigning on actually fixing the roads shows how unserious that Governor Whitmer and the Senate and House Democrats are on actually fixing our infrastructure, rebuilding our roads and bridges. And also earlier this year, you could have gotten a big bipartisan win on the earned income tax credit. Checks could have been out in hardworking, low-income families' hands now.
Bill Ballinger, of the Ballinger Report, who watches Lansing pretty closely for a lot of decades now, as I'm sure you know, recently said in one of his reports, Republicans' worst fears about what Democrats would do if they took charge in Lansing are being realized. You agree?
I mean, the Democrats, this is one thing, is that they are working on what they told people they would do, which would make Michigan less competitive, increase the cost of construction projects and rebuilding our bridges and highways and schools, meaning less money for schools in terms of construction and paying back the big union bosses.
Let me try one other thing on you that has drawn a lot of attention this week, and that certainly is gun control. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was there speaking in front of the Capitol. We certainly have all seen what has happened, the tragedy at Michigan State University. Governor Whitmer recently at that rally said, "We are done only offering thoughts and prayers. It's time for action." What action do you see coming down the pipe that Republican side of the aisle will agree on to come up with something to make it safer for our children, for our teachers that are in these school institutions?
Well, first off, the Democrats are unserious about actually finding a bipartisan compromise, a way forward to make sure that our schools are safe, making sure our students are safe, and making sure our families are safe. A lot of these woke prosecutors, left-wing progressive prosecutors, won't even follow through and prosecute the gun laws that we actually have. The shooter at Michigan State University wasn't charged with a full felony that he could have been charged with 4 years ago that would have prevented him from buying a gun legally to begin with. But there was a far left woke prosecutor in Ingham County that refused to do these to prosecute these gun laws. The goal.
You feel we have enough laws on the books now, and that more laws are not going to make us safer?
Well, I mean, what's the point of passing new laws if the prosecutors, these far left, liberal, progressive prosecutors, aren't even enforcing the laws that are on the books right now? The goal needs to be to find action we can take or a bill that we can actually pass that'll actually prevent things like this from happening. And I get the passion, the anger, the overwhelming desire to act, and I feel those as well. I have 2 kids, but it can't be something just to say that we did something. A Democrat from Grand Rapids said that these gun laws that they're passing wouldn't have prevented these shootings to begin with. They're using these crises to pass some of the far left gun laws that are out there. It's what we need, and what we see is somebody like Senator Weber, who just recently introduced more money for school safety, and actually more money to invest into prosecutors that actually follow through and prosecute some of these gun laws that are out here. We need to provide more and better security options to schools and place learning. In a world where we cannot predict when the next lost student or disturbed individual will target our children or our communities, it's essential that we work to make them safer. And so Senate Republicans, with Senator Weber taking the lead, has said instead of doubling down on this corporate welfare that Governor Whitmer and the Democrats continue to try to hand out to the most profitable corporations in the world, that we should work to use that for school safety, university and community college safety, along with more funding for prosecutors to actually prosecute these gun laws.
Why do you think we are seeing what many believe is an epidemic in these shootings?
You saw before the pandemic, you compare mass shootings before the pandemic to after the pandemic, that you've seen a 50% increase. The forced shutdowns, the isolation, the mental health issues that have been created from the government endorsed shutdowns of our schools, of our work, of our layoffs of working families, I think has provided real issues in behavioral health and mental health issues in our community, and senses of loneliness. And so there's some real issues that we can work together on behavioral health, on mental health, of trying to bring together behavioral and physical health issues that we tried to do last year, that a lot of Democrats try to stand in the way up. But I think there are some bipartisan areas that we can work on. And I think that can definitely include mental health issues. But I think what we've seen over the last few years is that these mass shutdowns and closures and not allowing folks to actually go to schools have real effects on people's mental health. And I don't think some people have learned from that, but it was wrong of what the governor did in the state of Michigan did in closing these schools and these factories and these plants.
All right, Senator, we need to take another quick little break. We'll come right back. I know we're tight on time. We want to make sure we get you out of here on time because you got a meeting to go to. We'll be right back. Senator, let's talk about the future of the Michigan GOP and the time that we have. You have a new chair of the Republican Party, Christine Garamo. Do you think she is the right person for the right job, given the division that is within your party right now?
As we go into 2024, Michigan's going to be a competitive state once again. I think you're seeing with House Democrats and Governor Whitmer and the way they're acting and jamming through a number of these far left progressive policies to turn back the clock to another lost decade. I think Governor Whitmer's trying to work to follow the Governor Granholm model of the future of lost jobs, less employment opportunities, and more families leaving the state instead of folks moving in. We need to have a pro-growth policy as we go into this coming decade. Michigan can't afford to have a lost decade every other decade. And so as we look at next year, I think the Michigan House will go back to the Republicans, and I think Michigan will be a very competitive state at the presidential level. No matter who the presidential candidate is, especially with the failures that President Biden's been doing on high inflation, higher energy costs, huge budget deficits, and more spending. And so I think you're going to see going into next year a real distinctive difference between Democrats and Republicans.
Have you met with the party chair recently, since she's been elected to that position?
No, I haven't met with her yet, but it is something where looking forward to continue to work. I know she's been out and active on things such as downriver, where they were looking at shipping some of that toxic sludge from East Palestine up to Belleville. I know she was, down there, and she's been active on working to hold Democrats accountable in the House and in the Senate. But I'm working with Leader Hall and House Republican Leader Hall, and making sure that we have all hands on deck to pick up the House next year to stop this far left progressive agenda that will end jobs in the state of Michigan, and that will make sure that we expand freedom in the state instead of limit it.
Two quick questions. If indeed you're going to be successful in taking back the House or maybe even the Senate, the party is going to have to raise money. That means as chair, she's going to have to raise money. Wouldn't you agree with that? And right now, a lot in your party, a lot of people who have the wherewithal and the financial resources are sort of sitting on the sidelines.
No, I see a lot of excitement out there from the business community on the far left liberal overreaches that the Democrats are doing. I know they want to see right to work maintained. They didn't want to see prevailing wage repealed. They want to make sure that we're actually growing the economy instead of just paying back big union bosses that the Democrats are doing. And so as you go into next year, whoever is the Republican nominee for president, Michigan's going to be a competitive state. And at the state house level, you even saw the massive spending with Whitmer winning by 11 points last year, that it was only a few hundred votes in one district that would have made a tied state house and a tied state Senate. The Democrats do not have a mandate on what they're jamming through in their through the legislature. And even Governor Whitmer back in December says we don't have a mandate. It's very unfortunate. They don't want to govern in the middle 70%. And I think the voters next year are going to reject that far left overreach that is going to mean more crime, less jobs, and less income here in the state of Michigan, and create a new lost decade. There's a reason why it's been 40 years since Democrats have had a trifecta in Lansing, is because it's so miserable and it leads to higher taxes and less opportunities to Michigan workers.
Final question, very quickly. Former President Donald Trump, do you believe that he should be running right now? He is clearly running, but do you believe he should be the nominee? And if he ends up being the nominee, will you support him?
Yeah, I'll support the Republican nominee for president. I do believe that it's time for a new generation of leadership. I'd say both on the Democrat and on the Republican side. That having Joe Biden at 82 running for president and re-election next year, I think it's time for a new generation for us to switch over. And I think there's going to be a competitive Republican primary, which will help make sure that Michigan's a competitive state next year.
You'd rather see someone other than President Donald Trump be the nominee for the Republican Party, correct?
I think it's time to move on to a new generation, somebody that can run for 2 full terms. And it's something where I think President Trump during his 4 years did a lot of good for this country between tax reform, rewriting NAFTA, keeping his promises on holding China accountable, withdrawing from the Iran Accord, working to force NATO to increase their defense budgets that we're now seeing should have been the case, and making America more energy independent. I do believe that and there's going to be a big debate within the party over the next year on who that nominee is, and it will be a fruitful debate. But I do think that it's time for a new generation to step up in both parties. Having Joe Biden at the running again, I think it makes it more beatable next year than any number of other Democrats that may be out there, because of his far less left progressive agenda that have meant high inflation and less energy jobs here in the United States. But I do think that as you look at it, let's have a new generation of choice in both the Democrat and Republican parties.
Republican leader, thank you so much for joining us on Spotlight, and we will get you back.
Thanks, Chuck. God bless. Have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you. And we'll be right back right after this. That's it for this Sunday. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the Spotlight. We hope you have a great week.